Could the current economic turbulence be a precursor to the rise of the Antichrist? The Bible tells us that the Antichrist will use economic means to control people, making them dependent on accepting his mark for their livelihoods. If the economy collapses, it could set the stage for a charismatic leader to promise stability and prosperity in exchange for allegiance and the acceptance of his mark. Could it be that the unprecedented levels of debt, inflation, and unemployment are signs of a greater, more sinister plan unfolding? Could it be that the instability we see today is part of a deliberate scheme to destabilize global economies, making way for a one-world currency? Could it be that the advancements in technology, particularly in financial technologies and digital currencies, are paving the way for the Antichrist control over economic transactions? As cash becomes obsolete and digital currencies take over, the possibility of a single entity controlling these systems becomes more plausible. Could it be that the increasing centralization of power and resources is a strategic move to create a world where people are more easily controlled and manipulated? Could it be that the fear and uncertainty in today's markets are not just reactions to economic data, but are also influenced by a deeper underlying spiritual battle, an underlying spiritual battle that cannot be seen by the naked eye? As we consider the ever-growing national debt and the instability it brings, it is important to ask, could it be that the Antichrist will take center stage as a result of economic collapse? This question may sound dramatic, but as Christians, we are called to be vigilant and discerning, especially as we witness increasing chaos around us. The Bible portrays the arrival of the Antichrist as occurring during a time of great turmoil and upheaval. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 6-7, Jesus warns us of wars, famines, and global instability, conditions that could easily pave the way for a charismatic leader who promises peace and stability, but at a cost far greater than we might imagine. Could it be that the Antichrist will take center stage because of economic collapse? One of the key issues fueling global instability today is the ever-growing national debt. The U.S. national debt surpassed $35 trillion in July 2024 and is projected to reach $36 trillion within the next 12 to 18 months. The U.S. government accumulated $1 trillion in debt in just the first half of 2024 alone. This rapidly increasing debt is not only a financial burden on the nation, but it also weakens the country's global position. As the United States becomes more indebted, it loses leverage and influence on the world stage. When a nation's financial power wanes, it becomes vulnerable to external control. What is it that raises debt like nothing else? Wars. Wars are extraordinarily expensive endeavors that require vast amounts of resources. They push national debts higher and create ripple effects across economies. This is nothing new. Wars have always carried a heavy financial toll. From the world wars of the 20th century to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, wars have left nations financially crippled. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 6-7, Jesus speaks of wars and rumors of wars as signs of the end times. These conflicts not only cause widespread destruction and loss of life, but they also contribute to the instability that could usher in the rise of a one-world government or leader. Let's move on to a discussion in many Christian circles. While many Christian ministers argue that discussions around a cashless society are merely fear-mongering or irrelevant to prophecy, they miss a critical point. A cashless society would indeed provide an easier and more effective means for any government, and ultimately the Antichrist when he arrives, to track, control, and manipulate people. This is not to suggest that a cash-based economy could prevent the rise of the Antichrist, for nothing can stop the fulfillment of God's prophetic plan. However, it is undeniable that the implementation of a cashless society would enable a new level of control that is unlike anything we have seen before. The growing shift toward a cashless society. In recent years, we have witnessed a significant global shift toward digital payments and away from cash transactions. Whether we like it or not, the trajectory of the world's economic system is rapidly moving toward a cashless society. The decline in the use of cash has been particularly notable in our nation. According to a report by the Federal Reserve, cash payments accounted for just 19% of all transactions in 2022, down from 26% in 2019. This decline has accelerated in the wake of the 2020 pandemic, as contactless payment methods such as credit cards, mobile payments, and digital wallets have gained popularity. Experts project that cash payments in the US will continue to decrease, potentially dropping to as low as 10% of transactions by 2030. Numerous businesses have already taken steps to eliminate cash altogether. For example, some large retailers like Amazon's cashierless stores and food chains like Sweetgreen and Starbucks have adopted policies that either discourage or outright reject cash payments. Many airlines, including American Airlines and Southwest, have also shifted to entirely cashless transactions for in-flight purchases. Even public transportation systems, such as those in cities like New York and Chicago, are increasingly adopting cashless payment methods like tap-and-go cards or mobile payment apps. These developments are often presented as improvements in efficiency, speed, and hygiene, but they also signify a trend that is moving society closer to a fully cashless economy. Proponents of a cashless society often emphasize the convenience of digital transactions. They argue that cashless payments are faster, more secure, and less cumbersome. No need to carry loose change or worry about losing a wallet. Just tap your phone or card, and the transaction is done. In many ways, these arguments are valid. Cashless transactions are often quicker, and they reduce the risk of theft or physical loss. But this convenience comes at a cost. What many people fail to consider is the level of control that a cashless society would place in the hands of governments and corporations. Digital transactions can be tracked, recorded, and monitored in ways that cash payments cannot. Every purchase, every donation, every financial decision you make becomes part of a digital trail that can be scrutinized by those in power. They know what you buy, where you buy it, how often you buy it, and how much you buy it for. In a cashless society, anonymity in transactions becomes virtually impossible. This, in turn, allows for unprecedented levels of surveillance and control. At this point, don't you think we are just one step away from a world where you cannot buy or sell without a mark? We need only look at recent events around the world to see how quickly financial systems can be used to exert control over populations. In Canada, during the 2022 trucker protests, the government froze the bank accounts of individuals who supported the protests, cutting them off from their funds and effectively stifling dissent. Similarly, in China, the government has implemented a social credit system that tracks citizens' behavior and assigns them a score based on their financial transactions, social interactions, and other activities. Those with low scores face restrictions on travel, access to loans, and even employment opportunities. These examples should serve as a stark reminder that the same technologies that make our lives more convenient can also be used to control and manipulate us. One of the most apparent characteristics of the Antichrist, as described in the book of Revelation, is the level of control he will exert over the world. In Revelation 13:16, 17, we read that he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. This passage makes it clear that the Antichrist will use economic means to control people, requiring them to accept his mark in order to participate in commerce. A cashless society where all transactions are conducted digitally would make it far easier for such a system to be implemented. In a world where every financial transaction is tracked and controlled, those who refuse to comply with the Antichrist's demands would be easily cut off from their livelihoods. No mark, no access to the digital economy. This level of control would be difficult in a cash-based society, where individuals could still barter, trade, and conduct business outside of the government's surveillance. But in a cashless society, where every transaction is digital, there would be no escape from the system of control that the Antichrist will enforce. It is important to note that I am not suggesting that the rise of digital currencies and the decline of cash are inherently evil, or that they are direct indicators of the imminent return of the Lord. As Christians, we must be cautious about making definitive claims regarding the timing of the end times. We must not be involved in the business of date setting, as Jesus himself warned us in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, that of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. However, it is undeniable that the trend toward a cashless society aligns with the conditions that could allow for the kind of control the Bible describes in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. The move toward a cashless society is not limited to the United States. Around the world, countries are embracing digital payment systems and phasing out cash. In Sweden, for example, only 9% of transactions were conducted in cash as of 2021, and the country is on track to become one of the first fully cashless societies. Many Swedish businesses no longer accept cash, and even some churches have adopted mobile payment systems for donations. The Swedish government is actively encouraging the use of digital payments, citing efficiency and security as primary benefits. In China, digital payments through apps like WeChat Pay and Alipay have become the norm, with over 90% of urban consumers using these platforms for daily transactions. The Chinese government has also launched its own digital currency, the digital yuan, which further consolidates control over the country's financial system. With the ability to track every transaction, the government can monitor spending habits, detect suspicious activity, and potentially punish citizens who do not comply with state directives. Even in countries that are not as far along the path to a cashless society, the trend is unmistakable. The European Central Bank is considering the introduction of a digital euro, and countries like the United Kingdom and Australia are seeing a significant reduction in cash usage. In Australia, for instance, the Reserve Bank reported that cash payments accounted for only 27% of consumer transactions in 2019, down from 69% in 2007. This decline is expected to continue as more businesses adopt digital payment methods. These trends are not merely theoretical, they are happening now, and they are reshaping the way we interact with money and commerce. The push for digital currencies and the phasing out of cash may seem like natural progress, but we must not be blind to the potential dangers that come with this shift. While it is tempting to see the coming cashless society as a direct indicator that the Lord's return is imminent, we must be careful not to conflate technological advancements with biblical prophecy prematurely. A cashless society is not, in and of itself, a sign that the end times are upon us. After all, technological progress is a natural part of human history, and many innovations have brought significant benefits to society. However, we cannot ignore the fact that a cashless society would make it easier for any government, whether totalitarian or otherwise, to control its citizens. This is not just a theory, it is a reality of human existence. As more transactions move online, governments and corporations gain greater visibility into our financial lives. In the final analysis, the rise of a cashless society is not inherently tied to the timing of the Antichrist's appearance, but it does represent a significant shift in the way control is exercised over individuals. As Christians, we must remain vigilant and discerning, recognizing that while technological advancements may bring convenience and efficiency, they also bring new challenges to our freedom and privacy. As we navigate these uncertain times, it is crucial that we remain grounded in our faith. The Bible reminds us that no matter what happens in the world, God is sovereign and His plans will prevail. While we may be concerned about the implications of a cashless society, we must not allow fear to consume us. Instead, we should place our trust in God, knowing that He will never leave us nor forsake us. In the midst of all this speculation, it is essential that we, as Christians, remember where our true hope lies. The Bible warns us of coming trials and tribulations, but it also promises that God will never leave us nor forsake us. As we face the uncertainties of the future, we must keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, knowing that He is our refuge and strength. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, we are reminded, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have, for He hath said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee." No matter how dire the financial situation becomes, we can rest in the assurance that God will provide for us. Our security does not depend on the stock market, the national debt, or the state of the global economy. It depends on the faithfulness of God. Our response to the uncertainty of the times should not be one of fear, but of faith. Instead of worrying about the future, we should be focusing on strengthening our relationship with God. We need to make sure that we are spending time in prayer, reading the Bible, and seeking God's guidance for our lives. We need to trust that He will provide for our needs, even when the world around us seems to be falling apart. It is also important to encourage one another during these challenging times. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, Paul writes, Wherefore comfort yourselves together, and edify one another, even as also ye do. We are called to build each other up, to remind one another of God's promises, and to support one another through the trials of life. As the world becomes more unstable, we must stand firm in our faith and encourage our fellow believers to do the same. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the rock upon which we stand, and no matter what happens in the world, He will never leave us nor forsake us. When the storms of life rage around us, we can find peace in the knowledge that God is in control. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to 7, Paul encourages us not to be anxious, but to bring our requests to God in prayer. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. We know of the figure of the Antichrist. His arrival is etched into biblical prophecy, his presence a dark shadow looming over the pages of human history. His spirit is here on earth. The man himself is yet to be revealed, but his spirit, the very spirit that energizes him, the very spirit that is him, is on earth. He is a figure of immense deception and evil, the final world dictator and the embodiment of rebellion against God. But right now, he waits. His time has not yet come, though he knows it is drawing near. He is waiting. There is something specific he needs, something foretold in prophecy before he can make his move. What is this event, this final piece that must fall into place before the Antichrist rises to power? What is this event that's so pivotal that it needs to take place for him to be here? They are part of a larger divine plan that has been set in motion long ago. The Antichrist knows this. He watches and waits for the event that will mark the beginning of his reign of terror, the event that will trigger the final chapter in the spiritual battle between good and evil. So what is it that keeps him waiting? What is this moment that will signal his rise to power? It's not hidden. It has been spoken of for centuries in the scriptures. This is the third temple. The Bible does not explicitly state that the Antichrist will build the third temple or play a direct role in its construction. However, it does make it abundantly clear that he will exalt himself as God in this temple. History isn't just random events happening without any reason. Instead, it has a clear direction and purpose, like a planned story with a start and an ending. Everything that happens is part of a bigger plan. The world events that are taking place are not just chaotic random events. No, they're following a specific path that was set by God Almighty. History is moving. History is moving along a line. This movement of history is not aimless. There was a beginning, and there will be an end. Every moment, every event fits into a larger narrative designed by the Creator. God has history on a timeline. This is not speculation, but a truth deeply embedded in the Scriptures. The Bible attests to this. The Bible assures us of this reality, that we are moving along a timeline of scheduled prophetic events. These prophetic markers aren't vague hints, but precise revelations of God's divine plan, showing us what is coming. Now, within this timeline, and within Scripture, particularly we see in Christian eschatology, time and time again, a temple appearing. This temple is significant. It signifies key moments in the unfolding prophecy. Time and time again in Christian eschatology, a temple appears, often marking critical events like the coming of the Messiah or the ultimate judgment. Prophecy has foretold these events with clarity and certainty. The Scriptures reveal that what lies ahead is not concealed in mystery, but outlined through divine revelation. These prophecies assure us that we are on the path to the final culmination of God's plan for the world. History is therefore not a chaotic blend of isolated occurrences, but the unfolding of a prophetic timeline, designed and foreseen by God Almighty. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. He will confirm a covenant with many for one seven. In the middle of the seven, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 to 16. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. The verses from Daniel, Matthew, and 2 Thessalonians interweave to create a compelling tapestry of prophetic imagery, deeply rooted in the significance of the temple as central to end times eschatology. The temple, a physical and symbolic space, stands as the center of spiritual worship. Its presence or absence has shaped and will continue to shape critical events in the biblical timeline. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 says that in the middle of a 7-year time period, the regular religious offerings will stop. This is a monumental moment in biblical prophecy, signaling that something catastrophic is about to unfold. This is significant because the temple is the primary place where sacrifice and offerings took place. For these offerings to cease, there must be a functioning temple. The temple is not just a building. It is the stage upon which the end-time drama will be set. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 suggests that the temple must be standing and functional for these actions to transpire. It is a prophetic necessity, a countdown to the ultimate clash between good and evil. Additionally, the ominous abomination that causes desolation is set up within the temple, an event echoed in Matthew chapter 24 verses 15 to 16. This is a moment of pure horror, a direct affront to God, taking place within the very space designed for his worship. The abomination of desolation is more than just a sacrilegious act. It is a deliberate act of blasphemy orchestrated by the Antichrist himself. Matthew's account further amplifies the urgency and severity of this event. When it happens, those in Judea are told to flee, underscoring the impending danger that is about to engulf the world. The reference to the prophet Daniel establishes a continuity of prophecy, bridging the Old and New Testaments. This continuity is crucial because it assures believers that these events are not random. They are divinely foretold. But the exact nature of the abomination of desolation is debated among scholars. However, the topic of the abomination of desolation is not my focus today. What looms larger is the temple itself, the temple that is coming, and the horrifying events that will transpire within its walls. There is a temple coming. This isn't speculation. This is prophecy, and what follows is terrifyingly clear. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4 takes this a step further by characterizing an individual who not only desecrates the temple, but arrogantly positions himself above God. This individual is the Antichrist, the ultimate deceiver. His actions will not be subtle. He will enter the holy temple and declare himself to be God. The audacity of proclaiming oneself as God within the temple is the epitome of a blasphemy. This act of sheer arrogance and rebellion against the Almighty will mark the tipping point of the end times. The Antichrist is waiting for this moment. He is waiting for the temple to be built so that he can seize his opportunity to deceive the world and exalt himself in the most blasphemous way imaginable. The Antichrist will be worshipped. That is the core essence of the mark of the beast. It is an issue of worship. It is not about buying and selling, nor is it about control. It is about worship. It is about his religion. Revelation 14 verses 9 to 11. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name." The fact that the world will unite under the leadership of one man should reveal several things to you, foremost among them being the immense power and level of deception wielded by the Antichrist. Do you realize that when he arrives, people will worship him, literally worship him? If there were ever a being capable of creating a religion so convincing that the vast majority of the world would follow it, it would be Lucifer. After all, he once dwelt in heaven, upon the holy mountain of God, and walked among the stones of fire. If there is anyone who could craft a belief system so compelling that the entire world would worship a man, it would be Lucifer leading that deception. Consider what he has already accomplished. Billions of people today follow false religions. What makes you think that when the Antichrist takes the world stage, Lucifer will not be able to deceive the world once again? He has done it before. We are already living in an age of great deception. However, the level of deception when the Antichrist arrives will be like nothing we have ever seen. When in history has all of mankind listened and obeyed the rule of one man? When in history has the world come together in peace under the rule of one man? When in history has the world viewed one man as God? When in history have people put aside their social political ideologies to follow one man? When in history has all of mankind put their religious beliefs aside to worship one man? When in history has the entire world been required to bear a mark or symbol as a means of allegiance to a single leader? When in history has there been a global economic system so tightly controlled that buying and selling are impossible without allegiance to one ruler? When in history has a leader been able to perform miraculous signs and wonders on such a scale that they deceive nations? When in history has a single political figure managed to broker peace in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and its neighbors? When in history has a leader risen with such charisma and authority that their rule is accepted across diverse and often conflicting cultural boundaries? The Bible tells us when in history this takes place, and that is in Revelation chapter 13. We grossly underestimate the pure and sheer supernatural deception that will occur during the rise of the Antichrist. What he will do is nothing short of supernatural. It will not be a natural accomplishment. But we know that he will not naturally accomplish this, for we know he is given his power by the dragon, and he is energized by the very gates of hell itself. Piecing these verses together, it becomes clear that the temple's existence is prophetic. This temple is not just a religious structure, it is the key to unlocking the events that will usher in the final chapters of human history. Before the events of the end times unfold, a temple must be present to serve as the backdrop against which these profound events play out. Its role is pivotal in God's grand narrative. Yet, in today's world, the concept of constructing a temple in today's political landscape seems almost inconceivable. The conflicts, the religious tensions, the geopolitical stakes, how could such a thing come to pass? One might question how, in a world as interconnected and as attuned to the nuances of global politics as ours, a temple could be built without igniting a series of conflicts. And yet, Scripture suggests that this seemingly impossible task will indeed be accomplished. The Antichrist will present himself as a protector, a peacemaker, even a hero, but his intentions are anything but pure. This unexpected alliance and protection is both intriguing and alarming, drawing the attention of theologians, scholars, and believers alike. Once the temple is built, he will unleash his true nature. He will turn this sacred place into a seat of blasphemy, claiming divinity and leading many astray. Daniel's prophetic writings give insights into the intricate unfolding of these last days. These prophecies remind us that what we see on the surface, political maneuverings, religious alliances, the building of a temple, is only the beginning. The prophecies not only point to the physical construction of a temple, but also underscore the deeper spiritual battles that play out behind the scenes. The real war is not over land or religion. It is over the souls of humanity and the heart of worship. These battles aren't just about bricks and mortar, land, religion, or political power. They are about the souls of humanity and the heart of worship. And so, we wait. The temple will rise, but with it comes the rise of the Antichrist, waiting for his moment to exalt himself, waiting to desecrate the sacred, waiting to deceive the world. The construction of the temple stands as an unmistakable beacon, signaling the arrival of a time that has long been foretold. Its towering presence will not just be an architectural marvel, but rather a spiritual touchstone, signaling that the narrative of human existence is rapidly approaching its climax. For the believers and those acquainted with prophetic scriptures, the temple's rising structure will be both a confirmation of biblical prophecy and a solemn reminder of the imminent trials ahead. The reign of the Antichrist will mark a period of profound transformation. While many will be enthralled by his charisma, power, deception, and false promises, those familiar with sacred scriptures will recognize his rule as a pivotal phase in the unfolding end-time saga. His dominion will span continents, influencing nations and leaders, consolidating power in ways that are both overt and insidious. His aura will captivate many, leading them down paths they once thought unimaginable. Yet, beneath this facade of charm and authority will lie a web of deceit, manipulation, and an evil hunger to be worshipped. However, thank God the reign of the Antichrist will be short-lived. Though he may deceive many and rise to power, his time is limited by God's sovereign plan. His rule, filled with darkness and deception, will ultimately give way to the light of Christ's return. The Antichrist's grip on the world will not last. It is only a fleeting moment in the grand narrative of God's redemption. Thank God, because Jesus is coming soon. When he returns, all lies and deceptions will be exposed, and the world will be set free from the bondage of evil. Jesus will establish his kingdom of truth, justice, and peace forever. The power and authority of the Antichrist will be utterly crushed, and every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Thank God, for we do not place our hope in earthly powers or fear the schemes of the enemy. We place our hope in the one who is victorious over all things. No matter how dark the days may seem, we know that the reign of the Antichrist is temporary. Jesus is coming soon, and with his coming, he will bring everlasting light and life.